Hello, my name is Sandy Adomaitis, the social media director for the Page International Screenwriting Awards, and your host for the Writers Hangout, a podcast that celebrates the many stages of writing, from inspiration to the first draft, revising, getting a project made, and everything in between. We'll talk to the best and the brightest in the entertainment industry and create a space where you can hang out, learn from the pros, and have fun. Hey, writers, it's Sandy. I'm coming to you from Studio City, the crown jewel of the San Fernando Valley, and home to Laurel Canyon News, one of the largest independent newsstands in the United States, and where you can turn into the CVS parking lot. My guest today is Joel Church Cooper, a comedy creator and showrunner. This is such a great episode. We talk about a lot of different things, including how Joel took a short video and turned it into the critically acclaimed half-hour comedy series BROCKMIRE, starring Hank Azaria and Amanda Peet. Joel also talks about the struggles, the highs and the lows of his writing career, and how improv shaped him into the writer he is today. We also talk about Joel's latest series, Going Dutch, starring Dennis Leary and Danny Pudi. There are so many cool lessons here for you writers. Let's start the show. Joel Church Cooper, thank you so much for joining me on the Writers Hangout.
Thanks for having me.
Joel, have you been outside today?
I have. It's incredibly hot.
I couldn't believe it. In February? It's a little strange. I wanted to ask you, do you have any thoughts on Netflix walking away from the Warner Brothers deal?
Realistically, either option was going to be bad for my industry, meaning every time there's these mergers, there's huge layoffs and less TV shows and movies get made. And this is going to be no different. My two bad options, I probably preferred Netflix because clearly one of the ways that this was resolved is that the administration was threatening one and greenlighting the other. And the fact that that's the one that won out doesn't make me feel good about not only the future of the industry, but also America. But it's like the definition of above my pay grade. At a certain point, I would hope that people realize that these large monopolies, they're bad for, even if you're the biggest capitalism fan, these monopolies are bad for capitalism. Choice, options. Just look at what's happening with why tickets are so expensive in America and everyone buys them at this huge markup on secondary. It's because Ticketmaster became a monopoly and then jacked up the prices of all these fees. And now it's cheaper to fly to Europe to see Taylor Swift than to buy tickets in your hometown because of the monopoly.
That is so crazy. It's a great time to be alive, Joel.
Certainly. And in the entertainment industry.
Now, you created BROCKMIRE, starring Hank Azaria and Amanda Peet. It was a half-hour comedy series that started as a viral short video on Funny or Die website. The series focuses on the downfall of Jim BROCKMIRE, a once famous Major League Baseball announcer who experiences an embarrassing on-air meltdown caused by his wife's serial infidelity, leading to a decade away from broadcasting. Can we talk about how that all unfolded for you?
Sure. I started working at Funny or Die, and I did a lot of their sports videos. I'm a big, huge sports fan, and the Venn diagram between sports nerd and comedy nerd is not that big. So I tended to get all the sports stuff I had there. And this was pre-YouTube when Funny or Die actually was a bustling business. People were paying to make videos. And so one of the videos that I got, they had already done a video as Funny or Die with Jim BROCKMIRE. And then I got assigned to do appearances for Hank Azaria in character. And I watched the video, and I had grown up listening to baseball on the radio. I'd seen Bob Uecker and Mr. Belvedere. Like, I understood the rhythms of these old radio institution play-by-plays. There's a Ron Burgundy quality to these local institutions of these play-by-play men. And I got what was funny, got what was interesting, the comedic rhythm. And so right away, there was a real chemistry and connection between the stuff I was writing for Hank in character, and he was really happy with it. And so Hank, Azaria, and Funny or Die hired me. I wasn't in the union yet, so they paid me non-union wages. And we got Marissa Tomei to be the female lead, and we were casting it, and they were set up in Shreveport, and then the independent financing fell through, as so often happens with independent movies, and it seemed like that was going to be it. In the time that they were setting up the movie, I'd started working as a TV writer, low-level staffed writer, and I was on my third job, and they said, would you like to take this out as a TV show? And I was ecstatic because I still love the character. I was still writing appearances for him for Hank, but I knew there was something to this. And then I was even more, I thought it made more sense as a TV show than it did as a movie. And what I essentially did is the first season of BROCKMIRE is the first 2 acts of the movie adapted over 8 episodes. Those events are what happened in the first 2 acts of the movie. And so I had a beginning, middle, and an end, and I wrote 5 of the 8 episodes.
For the writers out there, you writing 5 of the 8 episodes and running the show, when did you sleep?
We didn't. We invented the micro room.
Really?
Essentially, like, there were different union rules and stuff where, like, essentially I wrote, first they ordered 6 episodes and scripts. They ordered 6 scripts. But we didn't really have money for a room. We just had money for a daily rate and 6 scripts. So I and a couple other older co-EP, older TV writer friends of mine who had some time free, we sat in a room for a week and we broke. I had come in with versions of every idea, and then we broke it out and we talked character, and then I assigned them 2 scripts and I wrote 4, and then we turned in those 6. And then when they picked it up, I then wrote 1 more, and then a new writer wrote 1 more, and we did another like 2 weeks of writer's room. BROCKMIRE didn't have a traditional writer's room. The budget was just too low. When the episode order is shorter, you can do more on your own. That's the English television model of 6 episodes. They don't have writer's rooms. That's one of the reasons why. They have 1 or 2 or 3 people writing 6 episodes, because you can really, but you need a full writer's room is when you start to get 10, 12, 13, let alone 22. They were still figuring out how to do it, and I could do like 6 of 6, but beyond that, yeah. And I don't necessarily want to write 6 of 6. I prefer a writer's room. It's more fun hiring funny people to laugh with you in a room and to make things funnier. But it was a low budget show. We did the first season in 2016. We shot it, and we did it for $850,000 an episode.
Get out of town.
Yeah, which was incredibly, at the time, was like half the price of other comedies. We shot 8 episodes at block shooting, all 8, so like a movie. And that was really tricky. You had to keep all 8 episodes in your head to know which scene we would shoot all scenes from one location for the entire season out in one day. And you have to keep in mind, what episode is this? When does it come? What's a fun joke you could picture that would work with the comedy of that episode and that scene?
That paid off, because I don't remember watching BROCKMIRE and thinking like that it was cheap looking at all.
The thing about it is, early on, I had an idea of what's the style of the show, and I thought American Decay. I thought that was the sort of log line of the show across the 4 seasons that I came up with early on and was writing towards. Was the show's about a man getting better as a country getting worse. I originally wrote the movie script in 2011, and I saw certain trends in American politics, and I was like, what if, let's just imagine, let's live in a world where all this stuff just continues to get worse. And so you can watch all 4 seasons of BROCKMIRE on Netflix, and I think if you see, we are prescient about a lot of what's happened in the intervening 10 years. And the thing about American Decay is you can find it and you can just film it. You don't have to dress American poverty you go in a direction from a major city, you drive 20 minutes and you can find it pretty much anywhere. So we shot that show in Atlanta, and we were always able to find, every season of that show, BROCKMIRE takes place in a different location. We shot it all in Atlanta, but first season took place in rural Pennsylvania. Second season was in New Orleans. Third season was in Central Florida. And fourth season was in New York. And we shot them all in Atlanta. And yeah, and that's how we're able to stretch the money is the block shooting. And we never really set dressed that much. We just found locations and then used natural light to shoot it in all its fallen glamour.
For the writers out there who might not understand what block shooting is.
Block shooting is most shows, we do it on my current show, Going Dutch, we do 2 episodes at once, which means that a movie, the entire script, you don't shoot it in order. You shoot it based on a schedule. You work with actor schedules, you work with location schedules to shoot it in the most efficient way possible. Block shooting is you do the same with multiple episodes of television. So if there's one location over 2 episodes, you shoot in one day, you shoot that location out for both episodes.
Just a question that popped in my head. What do you do with guest stars? Do you try not to put them in those scenes?
You try to limit the number of locations they're in. But honestly, it worked really well with guest stars on BROCKMIRE because we would work with the line producers to condense their schedule, which we could do because they could shoot their scenes across multiple episodes in less time. So in the third season, we had J.K. Simmons as a guest star, and we were paying him scale, which is not that much money, and he was really doing us a favor. But we did promise him that he shot 4 or 5 episodes of an 8-episode season. He shot in 5 days. We just shot him straight, every scene he was in for 5 straight days. And it's still not that much money, but on a per day basis, it was less insulting than his per episode quote. So we were able to get guest stars by promising them less of a spread, by being like, you're going to be in 4 of the 8 episodes throughout the season, but we're going to shoot you out in 7 days.
Yeah, JK didn't want to be doing nothing for 3 days. So
we worked it out. It was a great favor. He's tremendous in the season. It was a real joy to work with him and Hank. It was the 2 people at the highest level. Their scenes together were electric.
Am I correct on this? Your first credit was a story by credit?
Yes. It's actually, I think, edifying for writers. Whenever I talk to writers, I do say, look at my IMDb. You'll see I have a credit in like 2004. And I think my next credit is like 2009 or something. The first one kind of came, I made a film in college, my senior year. It's UC Santa Barbara. It came out pretty funny. And we had a bunch of kids in it. And then they showed the movie to their friends of, look at this funny movie my kids were in. And then there was this couple who lived in Santa Barbara, or Montecito technically, and they were doing 3 days a week on a sitcom starting in June. And so in May, I interviewed for them because what they wanted was an assistant in Santa Barbara to hire there to drive them to LA 3 times a week and then be their assistant for the 2 days. But they didn't go in. And so I was in the very strange position of, I graduated on a Saturday and started work on a Monday, writing. They co-created The Nanny. Their name was Rob Sternan and Prudence. I'm blanking on Prudence. Robin Prue was what they were known colloquially as. And they co-created The Nanny with Fran Drescher, and they worked on Who's the Boss, and kind of from the heydays of television. They knew everybody, everyone liked them.
I bet they had the best stories.
They did. I was a fan of TV, had watched a lot of things they did, and I remembered some of the shows that they got on the air that didn't last more than a season, and I was like, I watched that. And they would tell me stories of how they got started, and it was, even at that time, it was a different industry, what they were describing than the one I was observing. But it was helpful to hear the stories, and it was great working for them. And then, so I was there 3 days a week. And then there's a Betsy Thomas show. She created the show My Boys. She's a showrunner and director. She actually directed some episodes of season 2 of Going Dutch. So it was her second show she ever made.
I loved My Boys. I loved it.
Yes, it's a great show. Obviously, we're baseball fans because we have the two baseball sitcoms. But she staffed the show, every other PA and assistant position, she staffed with improvisers that she knew. And so I came in right out of college and I'm like, why am I not funny here? Why is everyone funnier than me? What are they doing when they're acting out with their hands? And then early on, I realized, oh, they're all like main stage comedic performers at this improv theater. And then I learned about improv for them and talking to them, and then started taking classes when I eventually moved to LA. But how I ended up telling a story was this used to be a phenomenon, and it doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately for our listeners. But there used to be a phenomenon of when 15 to 20 comedies a year would do 22 to 25 episodes. Even with you used to have these giant writers' rooms of 14, 15 writers to make sitcoms at that pace. And it's true of whenever anyone does 22, you just lose steam around 16, 17. You essentially run out of ideas. The network says no to good stuff that you like, or things get blown up, and then you just have nothing. It's like a coal furnace and you're running out of coal. Like the machine needs stories. And I recognize that. And when they're in that desperation, they're just looking for anything. And so I saw that I might have an opportunity. And so I started breaking a story by, I was there. I would see rehearsals, I would see shows, tape nights, I would be there for rewrites. And so I saw how the show was made and got an idea for what could be a good story. And at the point where they were desperate, I sent in this outline and they decided to buy it. And then so I got a storyboard credit. And I'm 6 months out of college. I already have my first credit. I thought it was going to be real easy. Then I moved to LA, get another job as a PA, but now I'm not an assistant. I'm a night PA on another show. Try to do the same thing but they don't buy the story this time. And then I worked out a couple jobs, a couple more sitcoms as a PA. And the thing was, I recognized I'm not really going to move up this way, the writer's assistant way. I just wasn't detail oriented enough. I wouldn't have been good at the writer's assistant job to move up that way. So I quit doing PA work for sitcoms and I started sort of doing temp jobs and doing improv. And that was what I spent the intervening years doing, is doing improv, getting better at improv. And I was a main stage performer at iOS and before that closed, and I performed at UCB when it first opened and did improv for 3 or 4 years. And then was writing and stuff, but honestly not writing enough. And then at a certain point I was like, I'm in my mid to late 20s. I don't really have that many scripts written by me. I need to start focusing this. And then I started doing kind of web comedy, like 5-minute, 6-minute webisodes, sitcoms. I started starring in them so that I didn't want to act, but I thought it would get me more recognized if I was in them as well, so I could be able to take credit for it. And those did, for the time, reasonably well. And I got meetings off of that and representation. And eventually those sort of writing sketch, writing those web shows, they got me a job working at the current channel, which is now no longer exists, doing, again, non-union movie writing, which I was a big movie fan, so I could do very easily. And that was an interesting job in terms of I had to see a ton of movies to do it, had to put together a ton of clips, and had to churn out a lot of front-facing comedy is what we now call it, but it was green screen comedy back in the day.
About being on the Rotten Tomatoes show?
Yes, we were on the Rotten Tomatoes show on the current network. So in between there is 5 or 6 years where I was, in hindsight, I was developing my voice. I was putting together skills using improv. All things being equal, I probably should have kicked it in gear a couple of years sooner. But the process was what it was. And I came out with listening skills from performing, with instincts of knowing what's a good idea you should pitch, what's not, from being on stage. And all of those things I just put into when I was finally in writers' rooms, and they were one-to-one skills. And I found as soon as I was in the room with these skills, I had a huge advantage.
Did you develop a character while you were doing your improv? Were you the old man at the grocery store?
Improv, you do whatever the scene requires. I tended to do straight man stuff because I wasn't the most dynamic performer. And ultimately, I would say, because I'm friends with great improvisers who are your teachers at UCB still to this day, who would be recognized as some of the best improvisers in the world. I was never that level.
One of the things on the Writers Hangout that I talk a lot about is how good improv is for writers. You said, I learned to listen. And if that is the only thing you take away from improv, it will make you a good writer.
Yes, active listening, because there's no script, right? So in any improv scene, it's a rally, it's a tennis rally between you and your scene mate, where you have to be wringing every last morsel out of whatever they say. And you escalate the scene together, and then you make a move and they recognize it and they say, well, that's the move. Then I do this thing here. But to do that, you really have to listen. And then you have to listen to the audience, because that's the thing that it also gave me is I was doing improv on a stage in front of people. Now, sometimes tickets were free and we lured them with a free pizza or whatever. But sometimes there was 12 people, but there were people in the audience and you could tell what was playing and what wasn't. So sometimes you try something, it wouldn't play. Other times you try something, oh, that got a bigger reaction than I thought. And so the listening of both ways of not just what your scene partner is saying, but also the response from the audience. When you're pitching in a writer's room, it's very similar. Usually, sometimes you come up with pitches on your own, but usually writers' rooms are a conversation that lasts 9 hours. And so a lot of times you're pitching off of what someone just said. And that requires like a very active listening and then being like, hey, this is the idea at this point, and you took it this direction. We took it this direction. And we bent the idea and we added this thing to it because I think it has the thing you like, but then it adds the thing we were talking about earlier. And the other thing that's tough in a writer's room, which you don't really have to learn improv, but is a skill I think improv helps with, is so you're doing a herald, which is an improv form where there's essentially three storylines with three scenes in them. You do the first beat, second beat, third beat, beginning, middle, and end a little bit. You can do different forms. And then in between, you do two group games where everyone comes out on stage. So by the end of the show, you can walk onto any scene. You have to keep multiple storylines in your head. You can have multiple themes, multiple callbacks. It's a lot to keep in your head. And I do think in a writer's room, the thing I find new writers often struggle with is keeping all the different narrative possibilities open in their minds and being able to pitch on multiple different outcomes at the same time. And usually it's a hallmark of all younger writers, first few years in the writer's room, they'll pitch on what we stopped talking about 45 minutes ago because they had a good idea then. They know we're still talking about it and they're just waiting for their turn to talk instead of realizing that was a good pitch when it happened, but we've moved on from that. And this pitch will now, in fact, drag the room to a halt because we're not talking about that anymore. That happens very consistently from younger writers. And I do think it's something that improv helps with.
Did you learn anything on the Rotten Tomatoes that you've carried on in running your own shows?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing is there was a two-person writing staff. The host would sometimes write, but again, we were a non-union. So it was a two-person writing staff. There was the executive producer, showrunner, and me. And he wasn't super experienced either, but he had been around that company a little more. And he had instincts. He's a writer now. He's around. He still works. But he was a little inexperienced at the time. And the thing I had to adjust to is getting rewritten, which I think, again, it's a thing we call them baby writers, and it's slightly pejorative, but all baby writers, like someone new to a writer's room, you could be a 36-year-old baby writer if you just barely staff. All of people in that position, they hate being rewritten and they take it personally and it hurts their feelings. And I was no different. The only difference is in our normal writing staff, your boss rewrites you, or maybe one of the senior level writers rewrites you. They do it in a room, usually included. And let's say your rewrite doesn't go well, you can bitch to one of the other writers about that sucks, and like, yeah, when they rewrote me, there's some community in that. But I was on a staff of two, and the only other writer was the guy who rewrote me. So there was no solidarity. I remember the first time he rewrote something, and I thought at the time, making lateral moves that didn't make it any better. I took a walk around the block because I was like so mad. And then at a certain point, I just got used to it. And then Now getting rewritten does not bother me. Now I'm usually a showrunner. I've been number two before during my show. While I was also showrunning, I was like a number two on Minx and The Future Man. And like my bosses would write me all the time. And it doesn't ever feel great, but you get used to it because that's just the process. And if your story stays that you've helped break stays pretty intact and they keep some of your jokes, that's a job well done.
100% agree. Can you tell us how wonderful it was to work with Hank Azaria and Amanda Peet?
He's definitely among the most talented people I've ever worked with in terms of there's really nothing he can't do in terms of dramatic acting, comedic acting, character, voices, physicality. BROCKMIRE got very good reviews and was considered a prestige comedy despite our very low budget. And it would go in dramatic moments at times. We tried to balance the drama with trying to be funny forward and funny first. But there were dark moments on the show and dramatic moments. And Paul evolved that way because I just thought to myself, watching him work, we got an F1 race car on the track. Why are we taking it on a NASCAR track and making it only make left turns? Let's take it out on a course. Let's see it on different surfaces. Let's really see what we can do with these hairpin curves of emotional beats and jokes. And he was really up for it. And I was in a good place work wise where he had been a perfectionist in the past and really hard on himself and had figured out a system that worked for him where we were able to shoot things that he was excited with. And I was the main sort of person in post editing the episodes, but he would get basically carte blanche over his own performance of choosing the takes that he thought was best. And he would always give you gold. So he was plenty of options. And then Amanda Peet, she was great too, also very talented. They're very different performers. And it was fun to watch them work because I thought they pulled out the best in each other. He is so steady and so prepared. He would be, like I said, we would shoot 8 episodes a season. We would block shoot them all. So to be ready, he would be off book on all 8 episodes before we started shooting. So he would fully memorize all 8 episodes, know what he wanted to do with each dialogue, each scene. So then we could do scenes from episodes 1, 3, 7, and 8 in one day. He would have a firm idea of what he wanted to do. And Amanda is much more instinctive and naturalistic, where she would know her lines, but she wouldn't have any ideas of what she wanted to do. And she would just try to find it in every take. And every take for Hank was usable beginning to end. And I would say usually no one take of Amanda's was usable because she'd flub it or she'd go out or it wouldn't really match the performance in there. She was constantly in the moment trying to figure it out. And so that difference in style, I thought, brought a little bit of spontaneity out from his rehearsed, and then his sort of metronome kind of structure gave her a sort of a place to jump off of. And their scenes together, I think, some of the best of their career. And even they would say that. But Hank's performance you could appreciate on the day. But Amanda's is one of those that it really came alive in the edit room because then you noticed, oh my God, she really found something for this line in this sequence. Oh my God, she like this business that she did in this take. And you put it together and she was never not interesting every second she was on screen, which is very rare for an actor to be that alive on screen.
That is so interesting. I'm wondering, and I don't know all Amanda Peet's cinematic history. I wonder, do you think it's because she started in film?
Yeah, she even said as much. I think she maybe was in one play once. Maybe she did off Broadway or Broadway one time. And yes, I think she was in like an episode of Law and Order out of college. She was a young ingenue in like the 90s and like in Hollywood. And yes, and just worked in film.
Or her rehearsal time.
And that's the more important thing on film is can you capture something in a take, and you have much more freedom and experimentation than you do in a play. Obviously, you're locked into a certain kind of a performance, and Hank definitely came out of the theater, so it was definitely 2 different styles.
Did you face any pushback from the IFC executives about setting the final season of BROCKMIRE in the early 2030s, ravaged by climate change, the world? income inequality.
We also went hard in AI. We wrote it in 2019, and we were like, what if there was like an AI apocalypse where an AI just took over basically all of capitalism? And so we were, like I said, it holds up very well on Netflix. At that point, it was a season 4. We all agreed it was going to be the last season. It was doing well for IFC, but IFC basically was no longer going to make original content. So it was early on. This was my idea for the last season, and we had earned enough rope that they let us do an experiment really in the last season that I thought came out pretty well. It was certainly our most ambitious season, and I think it's where you could see the budget limitations the most. But a lot of the stuff there is very fun and funny and dark, very dark, about America and where we were headed. And then we released it into April 2020. I definitely think we lost some viewers who were like, oh my God, the world's ending. I don't want to watch this comedy about how the world's ending. But yeah, we had a lot of support. IFC, it was a certain kind of time in the industry. It was right smack at the peak. We started at Prestige TV, Breaking Bad, Mad Men, just sort of what was possible on TV. Girls was on, like the idea of a half hour that had dramatic elements that was now in vogue. And they wanted something they got something in our show that sort of, at least from a critical standpoint, was lumped in with some of those shows. And they were really happy with the whole show the whole time and really gave us very little network notes. And so one of the things I think that is striking about the show is I'll never again have that little filter between my original intention and what ended up on the screen.
I'm very glad you got to experience that.
At least once. I don't know if the industry allows such things. You have to make a lot of money before you get that again.
Did you act out your BROCKMIRE monologues?
The thing was, how I write is, and then lots of other people write this way. This is not like a secret I'm passing on, but I don't visualize things as well. It's why I always say I'm a writer, not a director. I can see scenes sometimes and I can see images, and sometimes I'll put those into scripts. But what I really write is dialogue. And at a certain point, the voice of the characters becomes distinct enough that I'm just writing as the lines they say in my head appear. Now, I don't write everything that I'm imagining these characters. Sometimes I'm imagining a line in that voice and I go, no, it doesn't quite. But then something will come along and you're like, oh, exactly that. And with BROCKMIRE, I had the advantage of I had seen Hank perform and seen him perform this character for such a long time that his voice in that character with his natural rhythm was in my head pretty early on. So when I would be in the shower, when I would take story walks, I call them like walks for an hour, and I think about this thing, a lot of times I would then think about an idea, what BROCKMIRE would think about it, and then I would have probably 50, 60% of the monologue. Then I would start writing it and then perfecting it. And what was really nice is it's a character who has ornate language and will use a $5 word when a $2 word would suffice. And writing a kind of verbose written character like that you hear Vin Scully talk and it's like he's reading from the great book of wisdom, but he's just making it up. He just has a cadence where it sounds like that. And he does have the kind of mind you can do a $5 word when a $2 word would do. So writing in that sort of style for BROCKMIRE, I just got in the habit of it. And yeah, and it helps even in the work I'm doing now with Going Dutch I was able to write a pilot and craft this idea based on Dennis Leary. Dennis Leary came to me to develop a show for him. And I have Dennis Leary's voice in my head because I'm a fan of his and have been a fan of his for 3 decades. And so when I sat down to write a Dennis Leary character, it wasn't a huge struggle. I didn't have to reach for even my own experience. I could just hear his voice in my head. And I think that's always helpful.
Do you hear me knocking? 'Cause I think I'm coming through. That's my Dennis Leary, Joel.
I've heard closer. I think it needs to be a little more angry, a little more Boston.
Okay. Now, speaking of Going Dutch, congratulations, season 2. Can you tell us about the show?
Yeah, so it's a workplace sitcom that takes place at the least important U.S. Army base in the world, which is in the Netherlands, and it has no real reason to exist. And they send this talented and decorated, but obnoxious colonel. Basically, all of his peers are now generals, and they think he's annoying, and they want to get him to retire. So they sent him to command this terrible base, knowing it'll be torture for him. And one of the tortures that they have for him at this base is that one of the officers there is a strange daughter who he hadn't seen in years. And so it's a workplace sitcom about this sort of different sensibility in a different kind of army base where this is where they send their weirdos and losers. And you have this like super serious guy running it. But there's also a family dynamic of this kind of bad dad who now being around his adult daughter realizes he likes being a father for the first time when his child is now 32 and tries to engage as her parent for the first time.
You shot entirely in Ireland on a real Irish base. First of all, I'm so jealous. What was it like filming there? Did you enjoy it?
I love the Irish experience. I would love for more things to shoot in Los Angeles, but of the places that I've gone to shoot something, Vancouver, Atlanta, Montreal, I preferred Dublin to all of them. We also we worked French hours, which are 10-hour days. So I was heading into work at 8 and getting back at 6:30 and doing that every day. And that kind of consistency is just so rare in production in America, where we work 12-hour days with overtime pretty consistently.
Does that mean that you can only shoot 10 hours and it's a wrap?
Well, then it's a wrap.
Interesting.
So that was great. I enjoyed the Irish crew. I took my family over there for season 2. They really enjoyed it, enjoyed the people. It's a show set in Europe, and that it helped to shoot in Europe. Like we found, there's no place we could have found, certainly in America, where 10 minutes from the studio to a village that is 400 years old and looks 400 years old. We found sort of older European looking Irish towns that we could substitute for our Dutch town. And so I think we got a lot of production value over it, as well as sort of saving money. And of course, the trend of things shooting not in Los Angeles, I think, is bad. But my personal experience of working in Ireland was about as positive as it could possibly be.
Did you go to the Jameson experience in Dublin?
We went to the Guinness experience, which was pretty fun. Sort of an 8 to 80 sort of tourism thing where in classic tourism style now, it's like there's a lot of social media ready installations and things to take pictures of. And it's the kind of thing I think I went with my wife's friends who came in to visit. The 4 of us went, and we all had a fine time. But like our lead actress, Taylor Mishak, she hosted 4 different times this year. And every time she hosted people, they wanted to go to the Guinness Museum. So she went to the Guinness tour 4 different times in the course of 3 months. But yeah, I love Dublin. We made lots of friends there. My kids loved it. It's a city that's having a moment because Brexit has left them as the English financial capital of the EU, and English speaking, meaning. And it's bustling. There's just a lot of action there. So that was also nice.
Joel, growing up, what TV shows were you watching, and did they influence your writing?
I watched pretty much everything when I was growing up. I was definitely a kid who liked sitcoms and liked comedy. And so I would watch whatever sitcom was on that I liked more than any other sitcom at the time. So I watched probably 5 or 6 seasons of Coach. I don't think I ever particularly liked Coach, but I liked Coach more than what was on opposite it. So I would just watch TV. And so I do think all of those sitcoms added up to a sense of story structure that I still contain within me from 10,000 hours of actually watching 10,000 hours of TV.
Cool.
But I would say that the stuff that really struck me as a younger kid was Roseanne. I thought that was about as good as it got on TV, and their couch looked like my crappy couch. Their ratty throw pillow looked like my ratty throw pillow.
Yeah.
My family was lower middle class, and so seeing a lower middle class American, they sounded like my relatives. They sounded like going over to my aunt's house. I connected, and it was so funny and so good. And I was a huge fan. And then as I grew up a little older, like I really liked Seinfeld. I started becoming more picky about the shows I liked. And then The thing that really blew it open for me was when I was in sixth or seventh grade. They started airing the old Kids in the Hall episodes on Comedy Central, and I saw that for the first time. And
Wow.
that sort of blew my mind, and just so experimental, so different than anything I'd seen before. I thought it was really transgressive and unlike anything I'd seen. Even for, and then later I realized I liked alt comedy. This is the kind of alt comedy, but even still, for alt comedy, Kids in the Hall is pushes it and is weirder and more experimental than almost anything else. And that was what sort of set me on a new course of, yes, I want to do funny stuff, but I want to push it and see if I can play with the form and do the kind of jokes that you're surprised are happening in this kind of story. And I think they gave me a comedic and a narrative ambition that I still carry with me.
When you started out, what was your biggest misconception about what it means to be a working writer?
Biggest misconception, I think, but I wasn't necessarily wrong. I thought there was going to be more money, like more consistent money. And what happened was I was the industry I came in with in 2004. By the time I was a fully staffed writer again in a writer's room was 2011. And that industry didn't exist anymore. You get paid episodically at a certain point in your writing career. And quite frankly, episode orders went from 22 to 10. Quite simply, the money you could make was cut in half. And then there used to be syndication money. And so there was this idea of if you get something on and it stays on and you make 100 episodes, you will make millions and millions of dollars. The people that I know co-created The Nanny, they never worked again after that show because they started getting their nanny syndication money. And it was just so much money that they just didn't need to work again. And that was who I learned. I was like, wow, this is a possibility. Very quickly, by the time I started, it wasn't really a possibility. I wasn't stupid at the time. It's just the industry has really changed. There's just not a lot of certainty. That we used to say, there was a term for it. We would call it 90s money. 90s sitcom money was different. There are still writers that are living off of their 90s sitcom money.
The beach house money.
Sure. That sort of doesn't exist anymore.
No.
I would say the other thing is the notes process and this idea that the sort of suits weighing in your executives. And it's not like they don't weigh in and they don't try to control the process and you don't have to answer their notes. You do, but it's pretty passive aggressive and innuendos and reading the note behind the note. A lot of times they're giving notes that they don't really understand. A lot of times it's someone else's note that when you push back, they can't explain it. Sometimes they can recognize the symptom of the problem, but they don't understand the origin of it because they're not writers. So they're pitching solutions for a thing that's in the wrong area because you're like, no, if we just fix that in Act 1, that would solve your problem. I guess I thought there was like people in suits that just handed you notes and it was like, do this, do that. And then you get to shake your fist at them. And it was much more adversarial. And it's not. It's much more cordial, but it's a lot of reading tea leaves, which is weird. You're trying to hold the executive's hand that's giving you the note rather than just them giving you the note.
Are you currently listening, watching, or reading anything you'd like to share with the writers out there?
I watched that new Game of Thrones show, Night of the Seven Kingdoms, and I thought that was excellent. I think I love the puzzle of how to adapt something, and there's a certain artistry to writing television, but there's also a lot of craft to it. There's a lot of plumbing, and I am appreciative of both. And I think a good adaptation is very skillful work. It's like surgery. So watching that was well done, was nice. And there's not a ton of comedies. I rewatched Mad Men, did a full rewatch. That was fun. I had rewatched the first season, maybe into the second season, or maybe watched The Suitcase or the big famous episodes. But I hadn't done the full rewatch of the later seasons, and I'd seen these episodes once at viewing parties like a decade before. And so I didn't really remember them. So that was fun to experience the show. And it held up fantastic. It's a tremendous show, amazing to look at, great performances. One of my best friends was in the costume department on that show, and the costumes are incredible. But as far as new stuff, I'm trying to think anything else new. I saw a lot of movies this year once I came back from Ireland. I really like Blue Moon. I've written with a lot of partners. I'm still on good terms with all my ex-writing partners, but that's really about a writing partnership ending and the weird alchemy between two people and their creativity and the ways that they bring out each other's strengths, and but you're ultimately two different people, and how very few writing partnerships last your whole career. It tends to be project by project. And so watching the premise of it, of watching this famous partnership break up on the night of this guy's new partnership that will become the defining partnership of American theater, while leaving the Hart character, Lorenz Hart, that Ethan Hawke played out in the cold. Very well done. It was like a play. I thought it was so well written and well acted. I really liked that. I like sentimental value. There was a Korean film called No Other Choice that was really good.
Before you go, would you like to play a lightning round of Brain Drops? Brain Drops is a fast-paced Q&A with answers only a writer can provide. And how many answers can you get in 2 minutes? Starting the clock. When writing, music on or off?
On.
If you're reading a hard copy of a script, 1 Brad or 2?
2.
Whiteboard or legal pad?
Whiteboard.
Final draft or Celtics?
Final draft, unfortunately.
From the past or present, what TV show do you wish you wrote on?
Friends. I'd like to earn millions of dollars.
Widows and orphans. Get rid of them all. I don't care, really.
Oh, I'm obsessed. I always try to get the page count. I also think there's an aesthetic quality to reading a script. Tarantino talks about it. You want to look at a page and just the formatting should feel comfortable. And anything where there's 2 sentences on the next page, I automatically think it looks stupid. But some people disagree.
Favorite snack while writing?
Seltzer water.
Favorite snack at Crafty?
Peanuts, I guess.
Do you come up with the title for your scripts at the beginning or at the end?
At the end, I like dumb puns and thinking of a dumb pun for the episode.
Writing at home, PJs, sweats, or clothes?
The new form of sweats, leisure wear. I wear leisure wear, comfortable pants, everything's comfortable.
Shaded parking spot right next to the production office, or $25K extra in the budget?
25 extra in the budget. Usually, if I'm working on a show, especially in Ireland, I have a driver, so they'll just drop me off. I rarely use a spot or anything.
You didn't make it, but let's do the other 2 questions, or 3 questions. Favorite time to write, day or night?
I would say morning, like 10 a.m., where you've settled into the day, you have an idea of what you want to do. And oftentimes I'll eat a very late lunch because I'll get on a roll and then not want to stop and then end up having to eat at 2:30.
Who would you hire? A staff writer who never fails to write the perfect joke, or the staff writer whose first draft needs a minimal rewrite?
For staff writers, I think jokes are more important. You're going to get rewritten. Everyone gets rewritten. So I don't think there's any staff writer who's going to come in with a script that's going to be letter perfect, because story and story movement, I think, takes experience to be good at it instinctually. And so what I'm really looking for from staff writers when I hire them is pitching jokes in a room, pitching jokes in rewrite room, pitching jokes that from a different perspective than mine, the kind of jokes that I will laugh at, but I wouldn't have thought of it. Those are my favorite kind of jokes to put into a script.
Last one. Will you read my neighbor's nephew's math teacher's 156-page comedy titled Irrational Numbers Save the World?
No. Who I'll read PAs and assistants on the show. I'll read scripts from support staff. I was support staff. I was an assistant. I was a PA. So I tell the assistants and PAs, I literally did this job. That doesn't mean that I'm going to treat you worse because people treated me badly when I had it. It means that I understand the sacrifices that go into it and what your hopes and dreams are and what you're looking for me to be. And I try to be a resource and a mentor to people on staff.
Joel, you're one of the good guys. Would you like to share any of your social media handles out there?
I'm pretty much all off social media, but I will say that I'm on Letterboxd, the last good social media, and you can find me. It's Church Cooper at Letterboxd. I log every single movie, and I'm not famous enough, and I don't have enough followers that I don't have to make it private. I will give my real opinions on whatever I watch.
Does Going Dutch have any social media sites?
Yes, there's a Fox Comedy Club, I think, on Instagram. But honestly, if you just search Going Dutch on TikTok or Instagram, we need views on social media. Or check it out. It's Thursdays at 9:30 if you like watching television live, or it's next day on Hulu. Yeah, Going Dutch. It's a funny show. It's pretty consistently enjoyable and a lot of improv on the show. I use my improv skills. We hired a bunch of improvisers, so there's a real sort of spontaneity and energy to it that I'm very proud of.
That is so wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for hanging out with us and just sharing so much knowledge and so much of yourself. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And that's a wrap for the Writers Hangout. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please take a moment to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Your positive feedback will help us keep the show going so we can continue bringing you more future episodes. Remember, keep writing. The world needs your stories. The Writers Hangout is sponsored by the Page International Screenwriting Awards, with executive producer Kristin Overn, Sandy Adomaitis, and our music is composed by Ethan Stoller.
Alexa, you are gaslighting me.